Welcome to the Work Smarter, Not Harder Rewind podcast. I'm Brittany Alligood.
And I'm Scott Holcomb.
And we're a part of the program accountability team within the Data Research and Accountability Department here at Wake County Public Schools. And so as the newest members of our team, we are taking a look back at our earlier episodes just to shine a light on how our department has been helping staff navigate through the self-monitoring process.
And in this Rewind episode, our colleagues Colleen Papelo and Andy Jackal were joined by Sherri Miller, who was speaking about her experiences developing and implementing a logic model in her work in the district. Today, Brittany and I are going to discuss some of the key highlights and takeaways that we each had from that episode.
So Sherri was asked to talk about how she's found logic models helpful in her work. And I thought it was really interesting that when she was asked that, she actually flipped it and said, I want to start by talking about what it's like to not have a logic model, which I think is really important, especially because for many program staff, they may start from scratch or they may be unfamiliar with what it's like to start or manage a program. And so really starting from that foundation of, before we get into what it's like to have a logic model, what is it like to not have that logic model? And so in this next clip we're going to play, Sherri describes how that was helpful in making decisions, especially when you think about not having a logic model. You may not have the intention, focus, or plan that you need to actually meet those short-term and long-term goals and really see the roadmap of where you're starting from and where you want to go with your program.
Because I've been in Wake County for so long, I want to tell you what it's like to not have one. So to not have one is we have a pocket of money. It's got to be spent in a week. What do we need to implement? What's available? What can we buy? Put a purchase order together and we buy something, we decide something without intention, without focus, without a roadmap, without a plan. And what I have found in my many, many years working at the district level is those programs, those inputs, those implementations come and go. They don't last long because there really never was a plan. There never really was a clear articulation of what is the need that we're trying to address. So I just wanted to say that because that is what was compelling to me about the need to have a logic model. Because if I was going to put the effort into implementing a new strategy, then we needed a better way to make sure that it lasted longer than less than 3 years.
So like Sherri was talking about in this clip, she really emphasized the point that we do see that programs and interventions kind of come and go when there is no logic model there, when there's no plan in place to understand what the need was, where you're starting from, where you want to go. And so she talked about how if she was going to put in that effort to start that initiative for that program, she needed a way to make sure that it lasted a long time. I think that's really important when we think about making sure we're valuing people's efforts, valuing people's time.
Yeah, instead of jumping to a fix first, you try to settle down with what the need actually is. What are we addressing here?
And especially when thinking about the money that also gets invested in a given program, we want to make sure that staff are intentionally thinking through why they're choosing a specific initiative or program, that there actually is a need there to establish that program and not to waste those critical district resources. So after this, Sherri went on to discuss some of her personal experiences with the self-monitoring process, as well as logic models in general. And so one thing that Sherri made sure to note was that all of this work was done through the help of cross-departmental collaboration. So she made sure to know that it wasn't just Sherri Miller's name that was on all of these efforts that were done. It was several people that she involved with her team, her implementation team, and all the people that she relied on for support and resources. So again, having that support, having a big team where you can rely on them to get those projects done is really going to be important, which I thought was a great point that she brought up. So the example that she discussed in this episode where Colleen actually assisted her through the self-monitoring process was the logic model that her and her team created for Letterland. So now let's hear Sherri explain how the logic model was able to help her not only understand the need to establish this Letterland program in Wake County, but how it ultimately helped her meet her goals and monitor those goals across time.
Part of the journey first is spending the time saying, what is the need? What are we trying to change? What are we trying to address? And at the time for Letterland, we had an absence of a systematic phonics program in Wake County. So we had data to show us, how many students were not reading proficiently. We had EOG data that was telling us where students were back in 2013, 2014. So establishing the need has to be first and foremost, not what is the new shiny and we've got a deal to sell you.
Yeah, I like at the end of this clip where Sherri talks about not just jumping to that new shiny deal to sell you. It's kind of like what Scott was talking about earlier about establishing the need first and not just jumping straight into a fix for a problem that you have. And you can hear in that clip Sherri talking about all the different components that she had that were built within her logic model and that were a part of her plan for her program. And Letterland is still implemented across the district. So several years later, it's still very successful and implemented, which again just demonstrates all of Sherri and her team's hard work and the ultimate effectiveness of the logic model and program that she was able to establish.
Yeah, and supporting that need through other perspectives and other data really allows you to kind of ask, hey, what's missing here? What needs filled in?
Right.
And doing that, just bringing in that data that she mentioned, the EOG data, other data points around student reading proficiently in the earlier grades, all that really helps establish that.
Yeah. And that was actually Sherri talking about all of those data points that she established for her program that she wanted to incorporate within her logic model was something that Andy then wanted to emphasize.
I love this analogy here about it being a journey and it being a roadmap. But the thing I wanted to emphasize a lot is the use of data. You can have a map and a compass and a GPS, but it really all comes down to data to know where you are and where you want to go. And I love the way that your logic model listed very specific with the need, EOG scores, subgroup disaggregation. You were very clear about the need and also what you hope to achieve and on what timeline.
And as Andy just pointed out, data plays a crucial role in establishing that initial need and in determining if the program goals are being met as the program is being implemented. So it acts as that compass or that GPS on the program's journey. So this led into a great question from Andy about the advice she would have for anyone implementing a logic model, as well as what challenges to expect and how to address those. So she gets into that here.
Don't expect perfection, right? Like it's messy. It's messy. Mm-hmm. And don't look at it as something that is check the box mandatory. Approach it as a way to help you plan. Think of it as a planning tool. Now, whether or not these boxes work, I know when I've done them with groups, we don't even have the boxes in front of them. We have chart paper, we have wipe away boards, we have sticky notes, getting ideas. It looks like you just start typing, but there's a whole lot of thinking and collaboration and brainstorming and then narrowing down to decide if we can do only 3 strategies, what would they be? And so there's a lot of work behind this. It's just so worth the investment in time to do. Don't do it quick. Don't do it alone. You reach out. I would say colleagues at central office, reach out to data and accountability. It was so helpful.
As we heard, the process of developing a logic model involves extensive behind the scenes work. So as she mentioned, narrowing down strategies, which benefits from that diversity and input.
Right.
That logic model really serves as just an organizational tool to display the connection between your strategies and the attainment of goals.
Yeah, and it reminds me of what we talked about in the last episode with Granville about using us at Data and Accountability as a resource. Shameless plug, but looking at us as experts you can go to for help when you're monitoring your efforts, and, not seeing us as auditors. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to be your collaborators, your mentors. We are here to ultimately support you. So I'm glad that Sherri shouted us out, because it sounds like she really enjoyed her work with Colleen and got a lot of good insight from working with her.
Yes, it is worth the investment in time. She also later in the episode talked about how that logic model showed the journey of the program being implemented, and specifically keyed on the logic model as a living document.
To tell the journey of what we did, how we did it, why we did it. I'm looking right at it. I'm looking at the logic model. So it also tells the story of all the work that has gone behind, and all the tweaks that we need to make, and all the lessons learned, and the new strategies that we added. So that's the messy part. You don't start erasing things just because they didn't work. You add to.
The logic model really reflects the journey your program's been on. So it's something you revisit frequently and make updates to reflect any current approaches or adjustments you're making. It's not something that's static. It evolves alongside that program that it's representing.
Right. I'm also like this idea of it sort of being a representation of all of your work and all of your effort across that program. One thing that I remember she talked about in her episode was, it's not just you do it one time and you do it correct the first time. It's mistakes that are made, things that you learn, ways that you sort of sort out that process. So sort of that iterative nature of going back to the drawing board is obviously a great learning resource, and not just time wasted, but it's time invested in how to really improve the process to the best that it can be.
Yeah, and in a report or another document, the logic model they can look very pretty.
Yes.
But they do allow for a lot of those erase remarks.
Yes.
You should be making mistakes and documenting your lessons learned.
Yes.
So that you can pass that on and implement things differently in future years.
And I would say if you're not making mistakes, there may be some other problems there, because we would expect you to have some mistakes and expect to learn a few things. So that is completely expected. And it's just a part of the bigger process.
So to summarize some of our things we wanted to emphasize from this previous episode on logic models with Sherri, she started off by actually flipping and discussing some of her work without a logic model and what that was like, and where you can kind of get derailed and run into trouble with that. Mm-hmm. She made an emphasis on collaboration with other departments and within your department, people inside the program, outside the program, getting those different perspectives and data points. She also focused on the, pieces of advice and really the mindset that you want to have going into developing a logic model. And then finally, thinking about that logic model as a living document. So what's something that stood out in the episode to you?
I think that last piece about the logic model serving as a living document, I really like the idea and the analogy that was discussed in this episode about the logic model being sort of a roadmap for your program or initiative that you're starting. I think it's really important to not only document the progress, just to look back and be proud of all the work that you've done over the past however many months or years or however long it is, but also being able to look back for future programs to see, okay, well, with this program, with this logic model, these things are what worked but was successful, and these are the things that maybe weren't as successful or maybe weren't implemented properly. So just being able to have that for a reference for future use, and being open and accepting of the idea that mistakes will be made, and really being able to see those mistakes as just lessons learned for the current program and for future programs or initiatives. What stood out to you?
So the thing that stood out to me the most was the role the logic model can serve in sustaining programs. So a lot of programs and interventions come and go throughout schools and across our district. And sometimes that could be because there wasn't a great plan in place to understand the need that was being addressed or justifying that it needed to be addressed. So that's what stood out to me. What do we have coming up in our next episode, Brittany?
Yes. So in our next Rewind episode, we are going to recap and discuss some highlights from an interview that was done with Belinda Prince, and we'll be learning about her process of using data in the special education department, and sort of her process in determining what to do to help students and staff and how data can inform those decisions.
Thank you to the guest and host from the episode we highlighted in this rewind, Sherri Miller, as well as Colleen and Andy from our program accountability department. If you'd like to get started on a logic model, we have a link to a blank logic model in the episode description. Thanks to our producer, Daniel, and my co-host, Brittany. And special shout out to Wake County student Sasha Wilson from Millbrook High School for providing our theme music for this season.